Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P. Joe Pizzapia. With me today is the king of bros, D-Bro himself, Derek Brown, Mr. Big Pod Energy, Andrew Erickson, and it's you. And today, it's all about the draft grades. How did teams do? How did they maneuver through one of the strangest drafts that I think I've ever seen in my entire life? More trades than you can shake a stick at. Well, we're going to tell which teams go back to summer school, which teams just barely made the cut, and which ones are going to Harvard and then not getting drafted, because most of the time the Ivy League schools don't send you a lot of people, except for Ryan Fitzpatrick, who I heard once, someone told me one time, went to Harvard. I don't know where I heard that, but I think it was one time someone did. But we have got a great show for you today, as always. And before we get going, I want to remind everybody we've got a new giveaway going on at fantasypros.com/contest. Deebo Samuel helmet can be yours, autograph, thanks to our friends at Pristine Auction. It might be his authentic 49er one at this point that he's going to just hand you autograph, because who knows whether or not he's going to be there to play this year. But either way, it can be yours, and all you have to do is go to fantasypros.com and, of course, go double check that subscription to our channel over at YouTube, because if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. And when you do at Fantasy Pros, you can screenshot that bad boy, head over to fantasypros.com/contest. And just like that, that Deebo Samuel helmet can be yours. And it's very easy to do, thanks to our friends at Pristine Auction. Now, somehow today, we've made it through. And as you can tell, Andrew Erickson did not know what day it was today when we started this podcast. My voice is hanging on by a string, and Derek Brown is under the weather. We have somehow soldiered through 752 hours of draft coverage on all fronts, but we're still here. We made it. And gentlemen, let me just say, it was an absolute pleasure to host that draft with you guys. I thought it was just so informative and so fun for all of our listeners and watchers. And now that the dust is settled, it kind of feels, Derek, like we have moved on to 2022 officially. I know free agency feels like that, but there's something about the draft that feels like the turning of the page to a new season. What do you think?
I love it, Joe. Yeah, I mean, with the draft, we soldiered through 3 nonstop days of action, trades, picks, a lot of dynasty movement, and players going to some good and some bad landing spots. But 2022 season is here, baby. After all these selections, and now we have landing spots for all these rookies. I absolutely agree. And especially with this week, I got dynasty rookie drafts kicking off. I'm sitting here figuring out what I'm going to do with best ball and all these different players. Season is going to be quickly here before we know it, man. And I'm here for it. I'm absolutely here for it. My body might not be ready for it, but I'm here for it.
I could be wrong. Maybe my ears are tired. Did you say quickly? Like you had a...
Yep, I totally messed that up. I realized that. I was like, oh, man.
It's okay. Quickly. And then you did it a second time, which is even better, which shows you how tired we all are. So, Andrew Erickson, how would you feel about the draft? Actually, Andrew's right now got a piece right now up on Fantasy Pros that's absolutely fantastic, where he's going through and grading all of the 32 NFL teams on their draft. It's an opus. It's fantastic. But Andrew, you've held nothing back on the Patriots. And when we get to the teams later in the show today that are going to get a little hammered in the draft, you are not a homer. You are keeping it real, as the kids like to say. So I can't wait. I'm very excited to hear your thoughts, because I know collectively at the time we had a lot of feelings, but now that the dust is settled, you've got even more feelings, I feel like.
Yeah, no, I got a lot of feels. There was a lot of tough conversations I had with my mother, actually, who's a just diehard Patriots fan. She's like, what do you mean, like, Tyquan Thornton? Like, this guy is so fast. Like, how can he be bad? I'm like, Mom, no. Like, you need to understand this. It goes from a value perspective, and then she's calling me about, the cornerbacks they're drafting, who's Pierre Strong, why do they draft a backup quarterback? So, I've gone through the Patriots draft multiple times, so I'm excited to break it down once again.
All right, let's, without further ado, get going. Let's talk about the teams that passed with flying colors, okay? These are the teams, most of them had multiple draft picks, and some of them really made it work. And I don't think any of us could possibly disagree that the Baltimore Ravens took advantage of that board, as Andrew was alluding to, where picks would be taken in some strange orders, and then somehow every time that happened, a great player fell to the Ravens. They start off with Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame, the safety, Tyler Linderbaum, the center from Iowa, then later David Ojabo, a linebacker from Michigan, Travis Jones, the defensive tackle from UConn, Daniel Falele, the offensive tackle from Minnesota. Just an incredible amount of, I would say, guys that they got in the first, second, and third rounds who all could have gone somewhere between first and second. So this is an A. They're the winner for me. You could even give them an A+. Derek Brown, what grade do you have on the Ravens? And from a real football perspective, how much talent did they bring in, and how quickly can that talent acclimate themselves to this roster for Baltimore?
It's crazy the amount of talent they just infused into this roster, and people look at it and say, like, look, like they got rid of Marquise Hollywood Brown, they didn't add another wide receiver. I mean, obviously, like, I'm a massive Rashad Bateman stan, but if you look at the rest of this roster, I mean, they basically just padded it with playmakers and upside and guys that should not have fallen down the board. I think if you were going to ding them just a little bit, like going back-to-back tight end in the fourth round, but again, it's the fourth round, was a little bit curious considering Mark Andrews is at the top and stuff. But even with him, like, yes, he's an unrestricted free agent, not until 2026. But if they wanted to move on, save some money and stuff like that, they could cut him in 2024, save $5 million against the cap. But really, I mean, come on, guys, we're splitting hairs, because if Ojabo was healthy, David Ojabo, the linebacker out of Michigan, if he was healthy, like, there's no way he makes it to pick 45. Falele, I can't believe that he lasted all the way till round 4. Hamilton, honestly, like, getting him at 14, as far as talent-wise, and I know that, like, some of his testing numbers were not great, still, he's a top 10, and I get, like, the positioning he plays. But him and Linderbaum are top talents at their positions in this draft class. So the fact that they got both of them at, you know, you can parse through, like, where they got them in the draft, but still big upgrades for this team. I loved how they approached the draft. It was just still another, it's wash, rinse, repeat for the Ravens every single year. They just basically crush the draft, and you understand how they stay a really, really good football team year after year.
Yeah, and the phrase winning is not always synonymous with the Jets, but it's really hard to look at this draft and not think that this was kind of the same thing that the Ravens did, Andrew, where I've got a A or even an A+ potential grade on the Jets, depending on how you want to look at it. They took Ahmad Sauce Gardner with their first pick, the 4th overall. Then at 10 overall, they took Garrett Wilson from Ohio State, the wide receiver. Jermaine Johnson, defensive end from Florida State. Many people had him as a top 10 talent. Some of it as a top 5. They got him at the 26th overall pick. And then they went out there and took Breece Hall at 36 overall in the second round. Jeremy Ruckert, the tight end that you like so much, Andrew. I mean, he plopped right in their lap. So the Jets came away with a lot. My only issue is I still feel like Zach Wilson potentially holds this roster back, but there's no doubt about it. The Jets came away and I think made the most of all their picks. What grade did you give the Jets here leaving this draft?
I gave the Jets an A, and the only reason they didn't get an A+ is because it just, you know, the running back position, like when I'm looking at it from a real life NFL perspective, like I'm never going to be like a huge advocate of, you know, investing a top tier pick in a running back. But when you do it, they got the best one. So, you know, Breece Hall, and he went in the second round. So they didn't take a first-round pick with him. They invested him in the second round, and it's a similar area where Jonathan Taylor went, and they believe that he can be another weapon for Zach Wilson, and that's the biggest thing. I know you talked about, you know, Zach Wilson holding this Jets offense back, but again, it's his he's entering his second year. Like, they need to at least see, like, okay, now we're going to give you a lot of weapons, Zach Wilson. Are you ready to take the step forward? And then if he can't do that with all the stuff they got, then they already know. Like 2 years in, they can realize, because the quarterback timeline is no longer like, oh, we're going to give this guy like 5 years to like figure it out. It's like, no, like the minute that you get it's like Tua. It's make or break with Tua this year. It's make or break with Jalen Hurts. Like all these teams are like, we're not waiting all this time to figure out if you're going to be our guy. If you can't get it done when we give you weapons, then we're done with you. So Zach Wilson, I hate to like label a guy as like make or break in his second season, but he needs to show at least significant growth from his rookie year, and there's really not that many excuses for it. I mean, they were able to add a lot of offensive weapons, Garrett Wilson, Jeremy Ruckert, and I even like the tackle that they added at the end of the draft, Max Mitchell, I think can be a really good swing tackle for them. So I thought that he was a value there in round 4. So the fact that they, you know, locked and loaded on these 2 elite defensive players in Sauce Gardner, Jermaine Johnson, who they just got at just an extremely great value, falling all the way to 26. You know, you thought that he was in consideration for them at number 4. So for the fact that they got their guy such later on, I mean, I thought that was an amazing move, and just adding more offensive pieces, because I think that was the biggest thing with Sam Darnold, is they just didn't ever give him what he needed to show that he could be the next guy. And they're not doing the same thing with Zach Wilson. So give credit to the Jets for learning from their mistakes that they made in previous regimes and learning from them and trying to do something different.
Well, another quarterback in the hot seat is Daniel Jones, and a lot of people like what the Giants did. They took a shot at Kayvon Thibodeau with the 5th overall pick from Oregon, the defensive end. Then Evan Neal fell to them at 7 overall. They later took Wan'Dale Robinson from Kentucky. Debro, when you're looking at the Giants, look, they got, I think, a surefire guy in Evan Neal, and Thibodeau is a roll of the dice. He could be that next great pass rusher, or he could be a bust. I think there's certainly the range of outcomes when it comes to him. But what do you take out of the Giants draft? Because a lot of people seem to like it. What grade did you give the Giants?
I would give the Giants a B plus. I like their draft a good bit. Like I like them taking the upside swing on Thibodeau. I love the fact that they got Evan Neal at 7, but where I feel like it kind of went sideways is taking Wan'Dale Robinson in the 2nd round with the wide receivers that were still on the board. Just feels like, and look, this is not so much of a shade at Wan'Dale, but it feels like redundancy. Unless you're telling me that Kadarius Toney is out of town or they're going to move him, then taking a slot-only guy, considering some of the wide receivers that were still on the board, and Wan'Dale, as good as he is, he's still a smaller, diminutive wide receiver. He didn't test as well as I thought he would. Yes, his college dominator and other things like that were good, but it felt, if you're going to take a swing at wide receiver right there, I didn't like that direction for them. So if I'm going to bump them down at all, considering an overall solid draft class and players before and after him that I liked, I was not a fan of the Robinson pick, so it definitely bumps them down.
Fair enough. All right, let's look at another team that had a lot of picks going into the draft. The Houston Texans, they took Derek Stingley up at 3, the corner from LSU. Then after that, at 15, they took Kenyon Green, the guard from Texas A&M, Jalen Petrie, the safety from Baylor in the 2nd round, along with John Mechie, wide receiver from Alabama in the 2nd round as well. They also got Alabama linebacker Christian Harris in the 3rd, and then Damian Pierce, running back from Florida, in the 4th. Andrew Erickson, when you step back and collectively look at the Houston Texans, and then a lot of people like this draft, what grade did you put on the Texans here? They bought in bulk, but they seem to buy a lot of quality as well.
Yeah, just before I hit on the Texans, I just wanted to say one thing about Wan'Dale Robinson, because that's kind of where I looked at the Giants draft and I was like, man, like I really want to give them like the highest mark, but like the Wan'Dale Robinson, it's kind of like a weird pick. Again, in hindsight, maybe if they do trade Toney, it looks better because it's like, okay, receiver is more of a need. And this was something that I stumbled upon on the Twitter sphere from old colleague of mine from PFF, Nathan Yonke. So he actually pointed out that if you look at Brian Dable, look at 2 receivers last year that were both under 5'8", Isaiah McKenzie and Cole Beasley, both played under Brian Dable. So just kind of food for thought of, maybe this is an indicator that they're going to use him in the slot and they're going to move on from Sterling Shepard, a guy that's really dealt with a lot of injuries. So just like from a fantasy perspective, something I wanted to hit on is that maybe that's like, that was their guy that they wanted at that point. So I just thought that was something interesting to share. But for the Texans, I had them at an A-. And basically, it's funny because I looked at their draft and it's so easy to tell that they have, tie. And Nick Caserio has ties to the New England Patriots just based on what they did in the draft, or at least the prime New England Patriots, not the ones that we saw have drafted.
I was going to say, I kind of wish he had ties to the current Patriots after this draft, but
but like with the Stingley pick, you have the classic Belichick valuing pass coverage over pass rush. So it's Derek Stingley, a man corner, can be a shutdown guy. You've seen so many guys go through New England, Ty Law, Stephon Gilmore, Darrelle Revis, Asante Samuel, like all these guys, like that's how they're viewing Derek Stingley. They, reached on a guard a little bit, I think, of Kenyon Green, but a starter nonetheless that's going to be really solid in the interior. A slot cornerback safety hybrid with Jalen Petrie. Versatility is something that Belichick obviously always preached with a lot of his defensive backs. 2 players from Alabama. No surprises there, honestly. John Mechie's a really solid guy that I think that can be a dependable weapon for Davis Mills. Christian Harris is a linebacker that, has the experience and has the pedigree coming from the Nick Saban system. And then other guys that I just think that were gems, honestly, in day 3. Damian Pierce. I know that Debro likes Damian Pierce a lot. And I know he's disappointed that the Saints didn't snag him up. And defensive tackle Thomas Booker, just a guy that he led the FBS in tackles and ranked 6th in run stops among the D tackle class. So a bunch of guys that I think were really underrated and not necessarily used the right way, especially with Pierce, again, a guy never had over 106 carries in college. But let's be honest here, like the Florida head coach was a donkey. Dan Mullen had no idea what he was doing. And the minute that he got fired, what do you know? Damian Pierce is getting double-digit carries, and he's good. So I think the Texans were pretty flawless up and down the board. I think that maybe the Kenyon Green thing was like a little bit of a reach, but A- nonetheless.
All right. Now, some of the teams that had a lot of picks were bad teams, but there was a team that had a lot of picks. It's pretty darn good. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. They came away in the first round of the 21st pick with Trent McDuffie, the corner from Washington, then George Karlaftis at 30, defensive end from Purdue. Then with the second round, they took Sky Moore, wide receiver from Western Michigan, one of our favorites. They got their safety from Cincinnati, Brian Cook. They got linebacker Leo Chenal from Wisconsin in the third round. So a lot of talent here, Derek Brown, for the Chiefs that really, I think, are turning this roster over. I think we've seen the end of chapter 1 of the Mahomes Chiefs, and now this is chapter 2 of what this team's new identity is going to be. And certainly, I think after the playoffs, they realized you got to remake the defense. You can't get into these shootouts with Josh Allen in the playoffs and expect to live every time. They kind of got lucky there the way the coin flipped, so to speak. So when you step back and look at the Chiefs, how well did they do here?
They smashed it. I mean, you want to talk about how good teams stay good. It's basically taking advantage of what other teams are, their missteps and mishaps. The fact that Sky Moore fell into their lap in the second round is fantastic. I mean, chef's kiss. Absolute chef's kiss. Watching all these wide receivers go off the board in front of Sky Moore, I was just like, what? We're picking John Mechie over Sky Moore. Okay, cool.
13th receiver off the board, Sky Moore. 13th.
Yeah. This is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And we talked about this on the draft show, so people want to hear the full breakdown of Sky Moore and my love for him. Go check it out. And check out the Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide, because I love this pick of Sky Moore. I think that he could walk into this year, and this is not so much like Juju Smith-Schuster hate, but this is more of Sky Moore love. He could be the number 2 target this season behind Travis Kelce. He's that good. And I'm tired of hearing all the... And it's a lot of this comes down from people comping him to Golden Tate. But I keep hearing about people talking about Sky Moore as only a slot wide receiver. Can we please stop it with this damn narrative? Can we stop it? Just stop it. Because it's bad. It's not true. Sky Moore can play on the outside. He can play in the slot. He can do both those things, people. But if you look at all the different metrics versus man coverage, yards per route run, what he did as a small school early declare, and what he does through versus man and press coverage, he can play on the outside. So I think the Chiefs absolutely crushed this draft. They remade their defense like we were talking about. Getting McDuffie, a guy that has length, can play man, can play zone. I think there's not enough good things that I could say about the Chiefs defense. I mean, Chiefs draft class. They absolutely smashed it.
I love that energy you just brought right here. I felt like we were like Southern preacher channeling. I wanted to stand up and can I get a amen? Ooh, I love that. Derek Brown is on fire today. All right, there were some teams, too, that did pretty well, even though they didn't have a ton of picks. Some picks to discuss here. The Detroit Lions came away with Aiden Hutchinson, Jameson Williams, Josh Pascal. Pretty good draft there. Kirby Joseph in the third round. You had the Philadelphia Eagles coming away with Jordan Davis from Georgia, defensive tackle, Nakobe Dean, linebacker from Georgia, Cam Jurgens, a safety from Nebraska. And they also traded for A.J. Brown. You had the Pittsburgh Steelers, who found their quarterback in Kenny Pickett from Pittsburgh. Then George Pickens, a wide receiver from Georgia. DeMarvin Leal fell all the way to the third round into their lap at the defensive tackle position from Texas A&M. And then Calvin Austin they picked up at wide receiver from Memphis. And then you had, of course, lastly, the Green Bay Packers picking up Kawhi Walker, Andrew's favorite guy in the whole universe from Georgia. Devontae Wyatt from Georgia, defensive tackle. So 2 picks on the defense. They finally took a wide receiver in Christian Watson from North Dakota State, and then Sean Ryan, the offensive guard from UCLA. So, Andrew, between the Packers, the Eagles, especially with the trade, when you factor that in, because that is part of their draft because of the moves that they made, and the Detroit Lions, who kind of stands out to you? Even the Pittsburgh Steelers were thrown into that mix, too, of these teams.
Yeah, man, I think that, the Eagles, I gave an A- to. I think that they were, scooping up the value of a guy like Nakobe Dean. And it's funny because, so early in mock drafts, I was like, oh, like Devin Lloyd, just give him Devin Lloyd. It's easy. Their linebackers suck. And then it's like hit me and it was like, Howie Roseman just doesn't care about linebackers. He's never going to draft one in the first round. And I'm glad that I just finally it just kind of came to me. I was like, all right, I need to stop mock drafting them in the linebackers. And then, they end up getting a first round linebacker talent that they didn't have to pay for in Nakobe Dean. Now, obviously he fell because of injury concerns, but if it ends up paying out, like they will get the linebacker that they ultimately wanted and needed, and they didn't have to pay the cost for it. I thought that the Cam Jurgens pick was really savvy as well. Someone that can learn under Kelce, who's, earing the last year of his, NFL career. You know, he's definitely at the twilight of his career. So, you know, having a guy waiting in the wings that's ready to then step in, you can learn for a year and then step in to be the starter in the next year, I think just makes a lot of sense. And then look, man, like I love AJ Brown. So like it's hard. It was impossible for me not to give the Eagles an A if they got AJ Brown. like he is going to be still a monster. I think.
Isn't he the kind of receiver that Jalen Hurts could really use? Somebody who can catch the ball and then go make moves, break tackles, and do that. Because you don't want the burner necessarily for Jalen Hurts. You want the guy who you throw the football to, 6 yards out, 7 yards out, and then let him go make a play.
Yeah, I think that they just these yards after the catch receivers and guys that are like strong, like an AJ Brown. I mean, that highlight of him moving like 6 guys on the Ravens defense into the end zone is just something that only Titans and gods can do, and AJ Brown did that. So you can get speed otherwise. I mean, they have Quez Watkins, like he can go deep. Like that's all you need. Like you don't need to overpay for a deep, speedy wide receiver when you can get a guy like AJ Brown. I mean, the Eagles were second in screen rate last year, so we're gonna see tons of Jalen Hurts stat lines where it's like, oh my god, like Jalen Hurts like ripped it up, and you're like the replays be like, like dump off here, AJ Brown 70-yard touchdown, like Jalen Hurts like that was easy. So yeah, I
with a
think
Roethlisberger A-dot. Yeah.
Whatever works.
All right. So of these teams, obviously, we had the Packers, who people thought were going to take a wide receiver early. They continuously do not do that. Instead, they went on defense. The Detroit Lions came away pretty well. The Pittsburgh Steelers, planted their flag with a quarterback. Which of these teams that we all think are passing grades, Derek, which one kind of stood out to you in terms of being noteworthy?
I wanted to give some more Eagles love here because I feel like they just crushed. I loved their draft. You got 2 long-term replacements for Kelsey and Fletcher Cox waiting in the wings. Like that was a smash. And to come away with AJ Brown for what they did, like what they gave up to get AJ Brown, if you compare it against like the Tyreek Hill trade, the Devontae Adams trade, like to get a wide receiver that is this young, and I understand they paid him. They still didn't pay him like top number 1 wide receiver money. Was it market value? Yes. But with the way that they have constructed this offense, and this is something I tweeted out earlier today, like we could see them go back to being a pass-heavy team and really put it to Jalen Hurts and say, look, if you're going to be the long-term answer for this team, we want to see it. Because if you look at weeks 1 through 6 last year, they were 6th in neutral script passing rates. Now, everybody's going to say, okay, well, they ran the ball like crazy, but they didn't have the weapons. So the fact that they got 2 long-term replacements and they added an alpha wide receiver that complements Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert so well and their skill sets. I can't say enough good things about their draft class. But if I want to go to one other team here, the Lions crushed it. Absolutely crushed it. You have Aiden Hutchinson and Josh Pascal, who are, look, Dan Campbell, like if we could like look at the pictures of like him shaking hands with Hutchinson, Pascal's the same kind of guy. Like it's the fighting Dan Campbell's, people. These are culture building picks. And they got Jamison Williams. Like Jamison Williams falls into their lap after the Commanders go for Jahan Dotson, and you're all like sitting here like scratching your head like, what? They drafted Jahan Dotson over Jamison Williams? Like, what? What are you doing, baby? Like, that's not what you need to be doing. And then the Detroit Lions are just smiling all the way to the bank. Like, yes, give us Jamison Williams. Let's go. Love their draft class.
D-Bro.
Yeah, I agree, man.
Question for you. So the thing that when I was reviewing the Lions, something that just kind of stood out to me was they didn't take a quarterback at all. So do you think that was just that, they did a ton of homework on all of these quarterbacks. They saw them at the Senior Bowl, like. And do you think they just ultimately were like, you know what? There's no one here that we can really invest in. And I almost think that they deserve like credit for that because it was so easy to peg them as a team to, just give him a quarterback, 32, like Jared Goff, whatever. He's not that great. It's like, they were like, you know what? No, we're not actually going to take quarterback because we have to. At least that's kind of the way I viewed it. And I was like, you know what? No, they deserve a pat on the back for like being restrained. And they could have took a shot on, a Sam Howell like in the 5th round or whatever, but they didn't because they were like, you know what? We don't want any of these quarterbacks, and I don't think that was the wrong move. What do you think?
I think, the long-term aspect too is they're looking ahead to next year, which is theoretically a much better quarterback class, and they're looking ahead to a year where they're probably going to have another top 10 pick. Let's be honest. I mean, there's a good chance they're going to be right back there again. And it's just, I think that's more to, if any team closed any gap, as good of a draft as the Jets had, you still see their odds in Vegas are still putrid, to win the division even. The one team is the Eagles that I think really closed that gap in the East. When you come back with this draft and you look at what they did on defense, you look at acquiring an A.J. Brown during the draft. To me, that's the one. I think it went down to basically 2-1 now.
Yeah, the Eagles odds were the ones that moved the most. The Jets were also increased again. They were like really still.
They increased, but they're still ridiculous. Yeah, they're still long shot.
The only team that had their odds were worse after the draft was the Seattle Seahawks because they didn't draft the quarterback. And well,
let's get to them in a second. All right, let's go to some of the teams that were in the middle. So those were all the teams that we thought passed with flying colors. And these are some of our teams that made the grade. The Tennessee Titans, they did replace A.J. Brown with Traylon Burks in the first round. They did draft a corner in Roger McCreary, Nicholas Petit-Frere, offensive tackle from Ohio State, and then selected Malik Willis from Liberty. I think we all kind of feel like it's kind of a B team. It's good, maybe B minus, depending on what happens. If Malik Willis hits, could turn out to be an A class, but I think that's a little bit more projectable. We have the Atlanta Falcons in this group. I know they took Drake London, but Ebiketie was another player we like, a defensive end from Penn State, Arnold Ebiketie. He was taken in the second round. Then you have in the second round too, Troy Anderson, linebacker from Montana State. They ended up taking a quarterback here, Desmond Ridder. Let's talk about these two teams for a second, gentlemen. Andrew, I'm going to start with you with these. These are two teams that did end up going into the quarterback pool and dipping their feet. How do you think they came out? Let's start with the Atlanta Falcons, and then I'm going to go over to Derek Brown for his take on the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, so I think I'm a little higher on these two drafts. So I ended up giving both Falcons and Titans A- grades. And I guess for me, I was looking at the Falcons as they finally checked off all the boxes in terms of what they were looking for in terms of need, wide receiver, edge, which they did. I love it when teams double dip at positions of need. And it's like, no, we drafted one wide receiver. Okay, that doesn't always fix everything because you don't know because injuries happen. It's like, no, draft 5 receivers, draft 3 receivers, draft multiple edge rushers because the Falcons have not had a pass rush since 28-3. I don't even know. I can't remember the last time the Falcons had any type of pass rush. So to get guys like Ebiketie and D'Angelo Malone, who I really liked coming out of Western Kentucky, who I thought could sneak in to round 3, I thought was really smart of them. And then maybe just because, and honestly, I think I admitted this into the article itself. So Troy Anderson and Tyler Algier were kind of some draft crush guys for me. The linebacker, Troy Anderson, dude, the fact that the guy played quarterback, running back, and then switched to linebacker and finished with the second most tackles in all of college football is just a guy that I have to gravitate towards. And I'm just excited to see what Troy Anderson does. Maybe he's a guy I draft in IDP leagues or whatever, but I need to have Troy Anderson exposure in some way, shape, or form. And then Algier, the BYU running back, 5th round pick. He has a potential opportunity in that backfield. The team released Mike Davis. You have Cordero Patterson. You have Damian Williams there. So it'll be interesting to see if he can, carve out a role as a rookie running back. So, and then the Ridder pick, I like because Ridder's one of the other quarterbacks I think that was in the kind of the same tier with Kenny Pickett, where you could see, okay, he has the NFL ready, qualities for the most part. And I know the accuracy is a big issue with him, but okay, if you're not an accurate quarterback, then how do you help that? Okay, you get him to pterodactyls. And that's what he has. He has Kyle Pitts and he has Drake London, who, inaccurate pass. Oh, well, not inaccurate for me because I can jump so high in the air. So I think Ridder was a good pick. It's hey, 3rd round, it's a good value here. If Ridder shows us something in this year, okay, we can maybe use him as our future quarterback. If not, okay, we're going to look at the next quarterback class and then you just move on from him. But I thought that they hit on a lot of things that I liked, and then I had to give them the slight bump up from B+ to A- because they drafted a couple of my draft crushes.
Yeah, I had them as a B. I had the Titans as a B+. Your thoughts here on the Titans, Derek, real quick. Kemi, what was your takeaway from their draft?
I think that if you're going to get rid of A.J. Brown, then Traylon Burks was a really good draft pick. And I've been agreeably so, lower on Traylon Burks than maybe consensus. But if you wanted the perfect landing spot to take advantage of his skill set, where he's at as a player, and cover up for a lot of his flaws, put Traylon Burks into the A.J. Brown role and get him to run slants and breaking routes for days and just ask him to create after the catch. It's exactly what you wanted for Traylon Burks. So grabbing him in the draft I thought was really good, as well as getting Roger McCreary. The Titans, outside of their top corner last year, were basically piecing together their secondary. When you're rolling out the zombie corpse of Buster Screen on a weekly basis, it's not good. So I think that he makes a lot of sense whether they move him out, keep him outside, what they get out, if anything, out of Caleb Farley last year. But I think McCreary makes a lot of sense. They could put him in the slot if Farley's ready to go. Then they have a remade starting 3 on their secondary, as well as getting the discount on Nicholas Petit-Frere. I thought it was a great pick as a guy that I think that they probably move him into guard and take over for Roger Saffold being gone. And really, if you're going to take the shot on, and I could crap on, I don't hate the Ritter pick, considering where he went for the Falcons and his stylistic fit. And could you craft an offense that suits both him and Marcus Mariota and where they drafted him? But if you're going to take the upside swing in the 3rd round on a quarterback, or even draft one outside of the top 2 rounds, Malik Willis is that type of home run pick. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why no team drafted him in the 2nd round. That still is head scratching to me. Even if you look at him as being somewhat more of a raw prospect and you're not even high on him, a team not going up to get him, it was ludicrous to me, because you cannot deny the raw talent the guy has, the upside, the ceiling that he still has. So the Titans grabbing him in the 3rd round, whether he pans out or not, the upside that he could possibly give your franchise, and if he hits and he's your starting quarterback and your successor to Ryan Tannehill, they crushed it. So I love their draft class. I'll give them an A. I really liked a lot of the things they did.
I really liked
now the Seahawks. Go ahead.
The Hassan Haskins pick, the running back.
Mm-hmm.
They've been kind of looking around for a RB2 for Derrick Henry. Obviously, Henry got hurt last year, and they lost Foreman due to free agency. So, I can't remember his name. Darrington Evans. Yeah. So he basically didn't pan out either. So, but Haskins I thought was interesting because if you look at his efficiency at Michigan, so he actually has over the last 3 years, he's the same PFF rushing grade as Breece Hall. So he's a guy that was really good, I think, and I think he fits the scheme well. And the fact that Mike Vrabel, who is an Ohio State alum, drafted a guy from Michigan in the I just think that's telling. I think that they really.
It's not personal, baby. It's all business.
But what I'm saying is, I think that the Titans like Hassan Haskins as their guy because they've been trying to find a running back to back up Derrick Henry, and they just really have swung and missed multiple times. So I think that this time. I think Haskins would be someone that we'll talk about, as handcuffs for fantasy. I think that he's going to be the guy that at least I'm going to probably gravitate towards as the guy to back up Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I would as well. Haskins is a very complete back too. He can catch the football. He can break tackles. Watching him last year play, it's so funny because he's a very different body type than what we're used to. I feel really used to the little fast, strong guys, or we're used to the big, bulking Derrick Henry types. He's more of a throwback, almost like a Marcus Allen kind of body type, which is what running backs used to be in the 80s. You used to see more just like a fit kind of guy, a little bit on the more slender side, but still very strong regardless. I think that's kind of an interesting thing to see the pivot from the body type of a Derrick Henry type back to Hassan Haskins, if indeed he ends up getting some playing time this year for one reason or another. Some other teams that were kind of, again, passing that we liked. The Seahawks, they had a chance to take Malik Willis several times. They decided that was not the pick for them. They did come away with Charles Cross, though, offensive tackle from Mississippi State, Boye Mafe. From Minnesota, who we all love. They did get another running back and Kenneth Walker. They like to run the football. So they passed, correct, gentlemen? We give the Seahawks a pass. That's like a B- kind of a grade. We all in agreement there?
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, look, it's if they're going to take it's like you got to bake in the fact that Pete Carroll's going to take a running back at some point. So you're just all right, well, at least they got one that's really good. And they had got him in the 2nd round. They already had baked in 2 picks already. So again, you can only you got to grade it on a curve a little bit because they're going to take a running back.
Well, and honestly, I would give them a B+ because outside of not taking the quarterback, which I mean, look, the NFL told us on this class they were not high on these quarterbacks at all. If Kenny Pickett didn't go to the Steelers, hell, he could have been a 2nd or 3rd round pick. Who knows? So outside of Seattle not taking a quarterback in this draft, I really like their draft. And I keep sounding like I'm the glass of sunshine today. I mean, we're going to get to the part where I crap on some teams about their picks. But, I mean, really, Seattle made a lot of really good picks. And we talk about guys falling down the board, like getting Mafe, who was a first-round talent, in the second round, getting Kenneth Walker. Also, Abraham Lucas is a player that I'm a little bit higher on, getting him in the third round and backing up the offensive line. Tariq Woolen, considering what he did at the Combine, I cannot believe he fell to the fifth round. Just taking an upside shot on his talent and athleticism alone, he should have been at least a third, fourth round pick. So I like a lot of things Seattle did here, outside of not going with the quarterback.
All right, let's lightning round through. We'll do like 30 seconds. I'm going to bounce back and forth because a lot of these teams are kind of clumped in the middle here in terms of what they did. We all think that they did well for whatever they had. Andrew Erickson, Indianapolis Colts. Alec Pierce from wide receiver from Cincinnati. Jelani Woods, tight end. Bernard Raymond fell a little bit to them. What was your grade on the Indianapolis Colts?
I give the Colts a C. I don't know. I don't love the Alec Pierce fit personally. I mean, Matt Ryan's not someone. I mean, Julio Jones. Remember, Julio Jones left Atlanta because he didn't want to catch passes because from Matt Ryan's arm was declining, the deep ball, and that's what Alec Pierce delivered. That's at least how they use Alec Pierce a lot at Cincinnati. They use him as a vertical threat, and I think that's where he is still deployable. And look, they needed to replace T.Y. Hilton, so I understand. Okay, well, here's our vertical threat. I just don't know how much they're going to necessarily use him. I would have preferred. I mean, they didn't take Sky Moore. I thought that Sky Moore would have been a really good fit with the Colts, honestly, inside, depending on. But I guess maybe they have confidence that Paris Campbell is healthy. I mean, I don't see it. Jelani Woods, again, you're replacing you're replacing Jack Doyle with Jelani Woods, which I like from an athletic standpoint. But it's I can't help but think it's like the Spider-Man meme where Mo Alley Cox and Jelani Woods are in the locker room and they're just we're the same guy, and it's I don't know, it just seems like a redundant asset. It's why do we need another 6'8" super athletic tight end? I get that you want that, but I don't know. I didn't necessarily like the fit. But I think they made up for it though in.
By the way, you're completely ignoring my time frame I gave you on these teams.
Sorry.
I'm trying to get to the negative things. I'm trying hard to let you and Derek
spend 10 hours on doing the draft grades.
Well, but if people want to get the
rapid fire
version,
I'm sorry,
the manifesto. Yeah, here's the rapid fire. Andrew Erickson is going to take us through the 6th round pick. If you want all of that, that's on FantasyPros on the draft grade. You
just remember the Spider-Man meme, Jelani
Erickson,
Woods,
you got to go quick week, okay? Quick week through these.
No,
okay.
Now he sits on the sideline. You're out
right.
until you think
Colts,
about what you do.
Colts C. I get a C grade from me. Next.
You can give me a little bit more. But, I mean, we just did a bit on Jelani Woods. I mean, I don't know. We're never going to get that time back in any of our lives. All right, Derek Brown, please, for the love of God, 30 seconds, give it to me on the Las Vegas Raiders. Parham, offensive lineman from Memphis. Zamir White, the running back from Georgia. What was the draft grade you gave them?
A C. I'm just going to say ew. I like the Parham pick, but taking Zamir White, ugh. He's a two down grinder. I wasn't a fan of that pick. Whether or not you pick up the 5th-year option for Josh Jacobs, did I make the time for that one, Joe?
Yeah. Look again, a couple things. I want to get to the negative because everybody's so excited to get there. I just want to get there faster. That's all. And some of these things that just don't take a lot of time to get through. Cincinnati Bengals. Andrew, are you ready for a second chance? I'll give it to you. Daxton Hill, safety from Michigan. Cam Taylor-Britt, cornerback from Nebraska. Your grade on the Cincinnati Bengals?
Gave them a B because they addressed secondary, which is their only weakness. I liked the Daxton Hill pick, versatile safety. I wish the Patriots had taken him, but he was available at 31, so I think it's a really good fit. Cam Taylor-Britt is a physical cornerback from Nebraska that kind of rose up my draft board, so I like that they addressed secondary, and then Zachary Carter was a decent defensive tackle from Florida that they drafted in the 3rd round.
All right, you're getting better. All right, next one, Buffalo Bills here. Kyrie Elam, a cornerback from Florida. So they go ahead and take maybe the heir apparent, Tre'Davious White. James Cook, running back from Georgia. This is very exciting here. So they waited on the running back. They end up getting Cook. What does this do immediately for Cook's value in redraft leagues? Because I imagine a lot of people are very excited about this one here, Derek.
I mean, look, James Cook is a guy that I had to sit here and do an about face on. I'm not a huge fan of size and talent. And look, he's a good passing down back. And the Bills have screamed all offseason they wanted to sit here and find somebody that could play passing downs and really move on from Singletary. So Cook jumped up my rankings. You can't sit, like, regardless of whether you like the guy or not, you cannot sit here and just totally dismiss a second round pick on James Cook. Even though he's a little bit undersized, his upside this year, and I'm going to have a ton of him in best ball and dynasty rookie drafts. I'm going to trade into him, try to get him, because his upside this year is the Singletary role we saw for last year, except he's actually good in the passing game and Singletary's not.
All right, so you gave them like a B on this draft or a B minus, somewhere in that range?
I would give them a B plus on this draft. I think Elam was a smash pick. That was exactly, and I kept mocking them with Elam because it's exactly who I wanted them to take in the first round.
All right, New Orleans Saints, Andrew Erickson, Chris Olave, wide receiver, Ohio State, Trevor Penning, offensive tackle, Northern Iowa. How did you think that Debro Saints came away with a grade?
I gave them a B minus because they did what we all thought they would did. They did receiver and a tackle, which is what they needed. But I did not like the Alontae Taylor pick. I thought that was a mega reach for him in day 2. And it's because they gave up so much to get Olave, which I'm concerned. Like, they didn't have any draft picks to kind of back end fill their roster, which kind of annoyed me because that's why they had to take Alontae Taylor so early, because they couldn't take him in the 3rd, 4th round because they didn't have any picks left. So I thought that they were a little maybe too aggressive on Olave.
All right, here are some teams that I've got C grades on. You can plus or minus all you want. Carolina Panthers, because they did take Ike Ekwonu. I like that, but the rest of their draft was kind of meh. About the Chargers, who took Zion Johnson from Boston College, Isaiah Spiller a little later on in that draft. Then you had the running back from Texas A&M. Then the Denver Broncos selected Nick Benito. They didn't have a ton of picks, but they did take Greg Dulcich, also tight end from UCLA. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers took Logan Hall, defensive tackle from Houston. Luke Gadecki, offensive tackle from Central Michigan, so continuing to build on the line. They also took Rashad White, running back from Arizona State. The Bears didn't have a lot of picks, but they did go into the secondary for Kyler Gordon at the cornerback position, Washington, and Jaquan Brisker, safety from Penn State. And then the Vikings, who took Lewis Seen from Georgia, Andrew Booth, cornerback from Clemson, again, the safety and the cornerback. Very good things here. But look, I would say all of these are good, right? We all agree these are kind of C or C plus, right? Does any of these really stand out to you guys?
You go first, D-Bro.
I like the Bucks draft a little bit more. I think the Logan Hall pick was good for the defensive line. Gadecki, I think they're going to slide in and have him play guard. So I like that pick. And then Rashad White being maybe the replacement next year for Lenny. The only part where I could shade them down, like I'd probably give him a B minus, but taking a punter in the 4th round, I mean, maybe they should have the C, but I'm a little bit higher on their draft class as
you want to ask who won the draft? Punters. Punters won the draft this year. Punters got paid. I love it. Andrew Erickson, any of these stick out to you for better or worse?
I thought that I was actually higher on the Panthers. I like that. Obviously, they were able to get the tackle at 6, and the fact they were able to get any quarterback, because we all thought that there was no way the Panthers were going to be able to draft any of these quarterbacks without trading down from number 6. They didn't have to do that. And look, like, you can say what you like or not like about Matt Corral, but he's someone that can compete with Sam Darnold. And if they get anything that's better than what Sam Darnold was last year, then it's a massive win for them. So, and I also like the Brandon Smith pick from Penn State. He's a guy that has a lot of traits, super young, and he was available in the 4th round. The other team that I'm much lower on, I don't think deserves a passing grade, is the Bears. I mean, I don't know what they're doing. Look, I get adding to the defensive side of the ball with Kyler Gordon, with Brisker, but you double down on secondary pieces when you have a franchise quarterback that we all know is good, and he was literally running for his life 24/7 last year. They drafted Ulysses Jones, who is 25 years old, who's older than Darnell Mooney and A.J. Brown. Like, what are you doing? Like, it was ridiculous. Like, I don't like, Tags would be turning over his grave right now for what the Bears are doing to Justin Fields. Like, it's ridiculous. So I think that the Bears, I gave them a D because they're not building around Justin Fields, despite the fact what they're saying. They have a really funny way of showing it that they believe that he's their guy, because he looks like he's kind of like on an island. Like, there's not much help for him.
Did you put the Browns in that same kind of place too, Andrew, where just underwhelming a little bit?
I mean,
Like
I liked them a
C-minus
little
kinda
bit
territory?
more than the Bears specific draft. So I gave the Browns a B minus. I mean, I thought that, obviously they didn't have a lot of draft capital work. They had a bunch of third round picks. I thought Emerson was he's like a lengthy cornerback, which is fine. And honestly, I thought the David Bell pick was pretty good. I think that he's a guy that they look at, and the Browns didn't need to add another speed receiver. Like, they have Schwartz, they have Peoples-Jones, and you look at the production profile for David Bell, it's really good. And the Browns are an analytically driven team, and they look at his production profile and they're like, wow, this guy, why is he falling so significantly? Oh, because he ran a slow 40. Oh, well, we're not going to have him run streaks down the field, so that's great for us. He's going to work at the intermediate level where he can be more productive. So, yeah, it was a B minus for the Browns for me.
All right, it's what you've all been waiting for. The teams that we're going to send back to summer school, the teams that we don't feel really good about what they did necessarily. Now, look, this could all change, obviously. It's just the initial instinct, the initial reaction for many different reasons. We can start with the Washington Commanders here. They selected Jahan Dotson, wide receiver from Penn State, then decided after that they would continue to just double down on the things that they actually do have. Oh, let's take a defensive tackle, right? Because, up front is certainly where we struggle. Let's take more with Vidarian Mathis from Alabama. Then they took a running back, which everybody likes Antonio Gibson, but here's Brian Robinson Jr. with another one of their picks. The Dallas Cowboys led the league last year in offensive line penalties and decided then to draft the most penalized offensive lineman in college football last year with their first pick in Tyler Smith. The Arizona Cardinals just signed Zach Ertz and then drafted Trey McBride. Sure, why not? And then Majai Sanders, who when I saw him, I thought he was going to literally blow away at the combine. He was so light. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking about there. Then you have the Rams. Didn't have a lot of picks. Can certainly talk about that. Neither did the 49ers. They did make a couple selections. You've got the Miami Dolphins, who had just 2 picks. I don't know if they made the most of them. And then, of course, the New England Patriots. So why don't we step aside here, and Andrew Erickson, all that time that we save now, you can now vent about the New England Patriots and their draft. Take us through. The floor is yours, Andrew.
Yeah, where to start with the New England Patriots? It's really a lack of awareness on the part of the New England Patriots, just knowing that Cole Strange is a guy that, was going to be available at 54. And I don't care what Bill Belichick says that, oh, well, no, he would have been gone. It's like, hey, well, we can go through the draft and see, oh, did you know that there weren't any more offensive linemen drafted till pick 57, which is after you already picked Tyquan Thornton at pick 54, which, I mean, to follow up the Cole Strange pick, and this is not a knock on Strange, because I think that he's a good startable guard for them. I don't think that he's a bad player. He's a really good run blocker at the FCS level. We'll see how that translates to the NFL level. But, I mean, sure doesn't look great when that's that Senior Bowl rep again, him getting destroyed by Travis Jones. So, obviously he's not a clear-cut, he's automatically going to be a stud. There's going to be some growing pains with him. And then the Tyquan Thornton pick is just, I'm just again, it's a guy that was going to be available in round 4. And I just can't
And Sky Moore was right there.
No,
Moore was right there.
Sky Moore was right there, and George Pickens was right there. And it just eerily reminds me of when they drafted N'Keal Harry, and then the next couple picks, Deebo Samuel went off, and then A.J. Brown went off. And they actually passed on A.J. Brown twice in that draft, because they also drafted Juwan Williams in the second round. So again, the first 2 picks were just such a bad terms of awareness of viewing the board and trying to identify value that it almost doesn't really even matter what they did with the other picks. Because if you had told me they got Cole Strange in round 2, Tyquan Thornton in round 3, I'm like, okay, I can live with that. Who was their first round pick? Oh no, it's they burned it. That's essentially what's going on here. So they just threw value out the window, and we don't know what Strange and Thornton are going to do at the NFL level. Nobody knows what any of these rookies are going to do, but you have to play the game. And the Patriots did exactly what the opposite of what the Ravens did. The Ravens are playing this game where they're putting themselves in the best position to succeed, and the Patriots are not. So even if the Patriots players, Belichick, and he becomes a Hall of Famer, Cole Strange, okay, great. It still doesn't mean that the pick was smart when it was made. And I just don't think it was. I don't think the Thornton pick was good. I liked the Jones picks at the cornerbacks. Marcus Jones was really honestly the only pick I liked that they made in the first 3 rounds. Good punt returner and kick returner. But really he's undersized cornerback. Same thing with Jack Jones, undersized cornerback who could have been available late. And then, backup quarterback, Bailey Zappi, Sam Howell's still on the board. Not exactly sure what the process was there. I guess from a system fit, okay, he also threw 60 touchdowns last year, whatever. And then just more running backs. It's you got Ramondre Stevenson last year. It's Why we don't like him? Like, are they not going to
I
resign
don't think it's
Damian
that.
Harris?
I think it's that Damian Harris is coming up on that last year of the contract, and they don't give
Yeah.
second contracts to
Bad
running
pick.
backs. So this is just
Bad
getting
pick.
ahead of the game. That's all.
Yeah, but I mean, it's
all right.
like, whatever. Running backs, they can get dime a dozen. They should have signed some UDFAs. There's glaring needs, and they just didn't do enough.
All right. So Andrew Erickson, hopefully you feel better, but I feel like you feel worse after that. So that's my big takeaway. You've got a lot of teams to choose from here. Cardinals, Cowboys, Commanders. You could throw the Rams or 49ers, but again, not a whole lot there. The Dolphins didn't really have a whole lot in this draft. They traded it away for Tyreek Hill. So of all these teams that did not make the grade, who are you really coming down with the hammer on, Derek?
I would love to sit here and crap on the Patriots some more, but I think Andrew did a
You
fantastic
can. I mean,
job
it's
with that.
fair. If that's what you want to do, go for it. But
No.
I don't know what else you could possibly bring to the table now.
I'm not. I think Andrew did a fantastic job with everything he laid out. Because I have no clue what the hell they were doing during their draft. It was
And
basically
more to
like
the point, Eric, when we were talking about it while the draft was going on, it's the overdrafting guys that allows teams like the Ravens to come away or the Jets to come away in their own division with the talent they did. Because every time you reach for somebody that's your guy, you let another proven talent slide into somebody else's hands.
it was reaching for athletes. Like if you look at their entire draft, it was reaching on athletes. Like Tyquan Thornton did not deserve to go in the second round. Then they took Pierre Strong, which I wanted to cry whenever they drafted Pierre Strong. He is one of the best outside zone and inside zone runners in this entire draft class. But yet the Patriots, who run a lot of power, a lot of gap, decided they're going to take a zone runner. And they're not changing up what they do. They've been a gap team for forever. Their other running backs on this roster are gap runners. That's what they are. Taking Pierre Strong, I was like, what in the absolute hell are you doing? Why are you drafting him and hurting my heart with this draft pick? But if I got to get off the Patriots for a second, the 49ers draft was terrible. Like, outside of getting Drake Jackson, and I understand you can never have enough pass rush. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? In the third round, you go take Tyrion Davis-Price when you drafted a running back in the third round last year, and then you decided you were going to sit here and park him on the bench, never use him, and we're going to go with a guy out of LSU who should have never gone in the third round. He might have slipped, and you could be signing him as a UDFA or grabbing him in the fifth round. No way was he going to go in the third round unless the 49ers picked him. Could they just stop picking running backs in the middle rounds and just parking them on the bench? Like, it's ridiculous. And then they go get Danny Gray, which if we want to talk about the Bears pick of Velus Jones, Danny Gray is in that same spot. It's like, can he run fast? Okay, cool. That's great. Outside of that, what is he doing? Like, why are you picking him in the third round as a guy that if you look at all of his production, 43rd percentile college dominator, 43rd percentile college target share. Oh, let's not stop there. 22 years old is a breakout age. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? Like, seriously. You want to talk about head scratchers? It was like the 49ers just put themselves, after they got Drake Jackson, who I thought was a good pick, they just put it on auto draft. They were just like, let's just sit the queue and let's walk away. Let's go grab a beer. Let's just fall asleep. Because I don't understand outside of that. And even if they only had 4 picks, what were they doing?
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Andrew and Derek to the park for a little Tai Chi, maybe some meditation, because I think they need it. It's been a long few days. A little silence, perhaps, to recenter themselves. In the meantime, if you need more draft grades, Andrew Erickson has the hookup for you at FantasyPros.com. He's got every single team. Is an incredible opus of work. It's fantastic. I urge everybody to go check it out. All the players more in depth and all the team grades in there as well. Plus, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/FantasyPros. And then when you do, you click that little bell for notifications and then take a screenshot and send that bad boy over to fantasypros.com/contest, where we're giving away an autographed Deebo Samuel helmet thanks to our friends at pristineauction.com. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Andrew Erickson and Derek Brown, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros. so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.